More questions, bound to be more questions. Yes, I didn't think we'd ever run out of questions.
Yeah, you indicated that there more than just you are working with this database healers, and we wanted to get other opinions and so forth on how to work with it to complement it with yours. What is this called if we got on the internet and we wanted to research it? The database itself.
Oh, if you're looking at database, look for the most common word would be akashic records, because that comes out of the Hindu mythology, and that's the way most people think of it. So Google that, and you will get the Hindu version of this, which is probably about, I don't know, 3,000 years old.
Considering light as a wave or a particle, what's the current thought about a wave traveling in an ether or not an ether? What is it traveling on or in? How is it propagating?
Okay, that question is a puzzle because it's asking something about something that actually doesn't exist. That's the problem. You see, if you believe that there are waves, then you need something for the waves to propagate in. There are no waves. If you're looking at particles, particles have certain characteristics as well. There are no particles. It's neither particles nor waves. It's information. As a matter of fact, I've just seen a new research that just came across my desk, I don't know, 3 or 4 days ago, where a new quantum mechanics experiment was done that had never been done before. It was some kind of double experiment where the results of one experiment were put in as an input to the next, and it was some kind of double quantum, double slit thing.
Yeah,
and
like 4 levels.
And that experiment came out with, if you read the conclusions, there was one very telling line in the conclusions, and that says, what we have demonstrated with this experiment, that light is neither a particle nor a wave. You see? Now, if you are into information theory, and this is a virtual reality, well, you knew that all along. It's information. They don't say that it's information. They didn't get that far. They only got experimental results that said it couldn't be either a wave or a particle, and it isn't. So when you have something that doesn't exist and you call it a wave, and now you have a problem of what does it propagate through, you see, you've created a paradox because you have a faulty assumption to begin with, and that is that there is such a thing as a wave.
All right, then if it's all information as such, how do you explain what we see when someone either is dying or has had a near-death experience as life as a spiritual form versus life as light as a physical form?
Light or life?
Light.
Light. Light is like the wave. There is no light. There's just information.
What are we perceiving then that we call light and light at the end of the tunnel?
We're perceiving information and we interpret it as light. Okay, we're getting information and a data stream, and we can interpret that as however we've learned to interpret. You know, there's a light, and there's a light shining on me, and there's lights here. That's part of the data. Light is part of what we interpret. We look at the sky in the daytime and we see light. That's information that we get. We talked before that the light workers use light. You know, that light's a metaphor. It's really just information that they're moving with their intent. So there is no light, but we have the interpretation of light. When I play in World of Warcraft or The Sims, my Sims characters go outside and the sun's shining. They have shadows, there's light. They open up a door, they turn on, they walk in their house, they flip a switch, and the house lights up, and I get to see what's in the house. There's no light. It's just information. We interpret it as light. So we get a data stream that Sims comes into my computer monitor, and it lights up 2 million pixels with an intensity, a color, and a position. And I take those 2 million dots that in themselves mean nothing, and just by their arrangement of intensity, position, and color, I see rocks and flowers and elves and monsters with horns and light switches, and you know, light comes on and there's a room full of furniture. I see all that stuff. They turn the light off, it's real dark. I just get kind of shady images of it. They close the door, I can't see any of it at all. It's just information. Ours works the same way. We are a consciousness. We're not a physical body, we're a consciousness, and we're getting a data stream, just like I get a data stream from The Sims or the World of Warcraft. Well, we don't display it on a monitor, because that's what we do here in this reality. We get the data to our consciousness, but we interpret that data as light, as dark, as chairs, as rugs, as buildings. All of this is how we interpret the data. And how do we learn to interpret data like that? It's when we are born here, when we log on and get a new avatar, we learn all that, how to interpret it. We open our little eyes and we look around and we say, oh, that's light, that's dark, that's an apple, that's mommy, that's daddy, this is a house. The house keeps the rain off. We interpret all these things. We learn how to interpret the data, because that infant is just getting a data stream. But he has to interact with the other players in the game, and the baby learns how to do that, interpret that data. And that's how we interpret it. And that's why when we go out of body and have an experience, we turn around and interpret that data in that out-of-body experience as what we saw, what we heard, what we tasted, what we smelled. We interpret it in terms of our physical data, because that's how we learn to interpret data. We can't interpret it any other way. So our interpretation is never quite right, particularly when we're not in a physical reality. But we can't do anything else. You know, I can't look at those million pixels that are lit up and interpret it as something other than it is, because I've learned those patterns, and those patterns are rocks and houses and doorknobs and light switches, and I've learned all those patterns. And if I never learned them, you know, if I was born under a rock and, you know, lived in the jungle and never saw anything like light switches or things, and you put me into that situation, I wouldn't know what they were. I have no idea how to interpret any of that. You'd look at it and you wouldn't know what it was. Was that an elephant or is that a house? I don't know. I don't know what either one of them are. What do those things mean? And I wouldn't know how to interact with it. Well, when we go out of body, it's sort of like that. We don't really know so much about that place. We get stuff, we interpret it in terms of our physical senses, because that's the only way we know how to interpret data.
Okay.
So that stuff doesn't really exist is the answer. It's just a data stream.